Joe Biden announces steps to bring the gas prices down just in time for the midterms, and they include yelling at the oil companies for their excess profits and releasing even more from the piggy bank known as the Strategic Reserve. So we'll talk about both of those things and what they mean and break down the scolding that the oil companies got. In other news, Stacey Abrams has come out with a plan to keep you from having to pay the high prices of starting your family. I think everybody knows where we're going with this, so we'll be talking about that and, well, what we come back for with that. John Fetterman releases his updated medical records from a doctor who, surprise, surprise, turns out to be a campaign donor, so we'll go over some of that and where we go with that. And an ABC News reporter who is writing a book on Biden's Afghanistan disaster has disappeared. So we'll go over that. It is going to be all this and more. Welcome back to midterm season. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. It's your right to fist bump. I think we need to go remind the daily ignoramus that it is your right to fist bump here, because you don't get that over there anymore. It used to say that your left is my right. My right is your left, and it's your right to fist bump. We don't get that anymore, but it is your right to fist bump. And you have that right. You can practice that right. Over here on Contemporary, we are back, ready to go. I have no idea why I slept so hard last night, but like I remember snoozing out the 6 o'clock alarm, and then the next thing I know, I grabbed the phone because the alarm's going off, and it's 7 o'clock. And I still didn't want to move when 7 went, but I drug myself out. We got everything organized here, and a couple things popped up as we were getting started. We've got thing I like and thing that I hate today, so we've got a lot to go over with this today. And I mean, going right into finance, they are going to try to gaslight you and say, no, it's the gas prices. We're doing everything we can, and it's just those evil oil companies. And I'm going to go on my rant again, by the way, once we get into that point, because, well, most of you guys who are going to be regulars here have heard it already, but maybe get one of your uninitiated friends in here to listen to this rant here, so we don't have to sit back and think to ourselves, man, they just really believe that it's the gas companies, and gas companies they're gonna gouge because they make so much money that way. They don't make crap for money if they're gouging prices, because you have to think about buying their product. I don't know what people don't get about this, but we'll talk about that. We will talk about Stacey Abrams. I've got video of her saying it, and I've got video of Token University hire coming out and squirming over what Stacey Abrams said. Yeah, that was a big misstep on the Abrams part, so we'll go over some of that. This radioactive waste thing with the school, that just blows my mind, but we'll go over some of that as well. But we've got a lot to talk about here on Contemporary. Before we get started, make sure you guys go check out great programming such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Bergenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys. Go check out, if you're on Twitter, Tweets by Brit and KTZed. Go, if you're on Twitch, check out Mr. Behavior as he continues his series of doing video game design while in live stream form. He's actually building a video game for you as you watch and talking to you, so go check that out. PJ Patriot, if you're interested in more news and culture by the common man for the common man, and go check out the No Gimmicks podcast as well. Check out all that great programming as we continue to try to reshape the news narrative, and that's going to be something in the things that I like today too. But as we try to reshape the news narrative as by the common man for the common man, and you know, I say it every day, but the people like Anderson Cooper, like Rachel Maddow, like that, they don't know what it's like to be like us. Some of them did come out of the ranks, but for the most part, they have no idea. Even if you go to the missing link, Ben Shapiro doesn't know what it's like to have to choose between eating and paying bills. He's rich. He's always been rich. So, go check out all of my friends here who will bring you more nuanced takes and more news that affects you and less news that affects the big rich folks as we get into it and we get started. And by the way, producer Pepe is not going anywhere. And I know that I complain because he doesn't really do a whole lot, producer Pepe. I have to pull up most of the weight, and that's why we sometimes get the microphone off when we come back from a video, but we love to have him here. He's going to stay here. He's not going to Austin Peterson's show. He's going to stay here. So, with that, let's get into it, and let's get started. And, by the way, speaking of Austin, I know I kind of ribbed him a little bit on Twitter yesterday, but one thing to keep in mind with that is he is on the AM radio, so he is beholden to the schedule of 15 minutes of commercials every 10 minutes. You don't get that here. Although those of you who did go into the Twitch side and watch the commercial at the start, I thank you for that. And do let me know if they're putting commercials in midstream, because I will put a stop to that if they are. I will find a way to put a stop to that. I do have an option to run a 1-minute ad break in the middle of the show, but I have to trigger it as far as I know. And if they're putting something in the middle of the show, we will put a stop to that. One ad at the beginning of the program. That's all that you need to see to come over here. But that's what we have for that. Let's get into it. Let's get started. And we start today with the Dow. Let's get the live chat up. The Dow is down today, or over yesterday rather, 99.99 or 0.33%, a third of a percent, to 30,423.81 throughout the day. It looks like it actually rallied after the futures were taking a massive dump. but then dumped back out. Tried to rally again and just dumped back out. It looks like it did try to climb back up. The futures are pointed up right now, so we'll see what happens with that, where it goes, and what we do with that. Looking in at your Bitcoin, Bitcoin is on the rise today after taking a tumble early in the early morning. It rose up and then spiked up and then continued to rise steadily. Coming up currently at 19,241.90, that is up 125.40 or 2/3 of a percent, 0.66. Bringing out the 5-day so we can see what happened yesterday. Who is calling me? Somebody texted me. It might just be a campaign one too, because it looks like it was just a random number up top. I'm kind of curious about that. So apparently somebody gave, and the town is right, because the last one that I got actually mentioned the town that I live in, redacted. But what I got to say to that is somebody gave my number, and I think it was somebody named Deborah, gave my number to all these Democrat, progressive, think blue, act blue polling firms, and I don't know who it is. But yeah, they go in, they... Oh. Hey, something else that I was dealing with yesterday. Well, we'll see. Sorry, that one is a bit of a port. Oh, yeah, that one is important. All right. Well, we'll deal with that after the show. Sorry, we had one that was a little bit of important here. Anyway, that's what we see coming off of your Bitcoin. It looks like it is steadily dropping at this point, so we'll see what happens with that. All right, looking in at gas across the Madison area. I thought it was going to be a campaign one. Gas across the Madison area, it looks like the quick trip has actually dropped about 4 cents. Gas where I live, down in Janesville, is actually lower than what it is in Madison for probably the first time since I've been tracking the gas prices. 370 just on the outside of the isthmus, 350 on the isthmus, 346 on the outset. It is 341 in Janesville right now, which is the lowest I've seen in a very, very long time. So I do think that they're trying to get some of that sweet, sweet swing state vote coming back up out of this, because it's about the only thing that I can think of, because other than that, everything seems to be creeping back up. But we'll be talking a lot more about gas as we go. So we will see what happens with that. Let's see what IBD has to say. Dow futures rise as IBM jumps on earnings. Tesla skids on weak sales. From Scott Latonin. Dow futures rose Thursday morning as blue chip stocks, IBM, jumped on strong earnings results. Tesla stock skidded on weak revenue results, even as chief executive Elon Musk predicted an epic fourth quarter. Come on. The momentum of third quarter earnings reports picked up with the results from Alcoa, AT&T, Dow Jones member IBM, Lam Research, and Tesla. Alcoa shares dove 10%, AT&T stock jumped nearly 3%. Lam Research beat Wall Street's targets for the September quarter and guided higher for the current period. But it warned that the U.S. export restrictions on China will hurt sales next year. Lam shares swung between modest gains and losses in morning trade. Airline stocks moved higher following earnings from American Airlines and Alaska Air Group. American jumped 3%, Alaska added 0.6%. Among the Dow earnings, IBM climbed 3% with Verizon and American Express due to report Friday. Elsewhere, tech titans Apple and Microsoft were barely higher ahead of today's stock market open. AutoZone, Double Verify, Molina Healthcare, and Vertex Pharmaceuticals, as well as Dow Jones stock Chevron and Merck, are among the top stocks to watch. Keep in mind the ongoing stock market rally attempt is the perfect time for investors to build and perfect their watch lists of top stock growths. Double Verify and Vertex are IBD leaderboard stocks. Merck and Molina Healthcare were featured in this week's Stocks Nearby Zone column, along with two other top stocks. AutoZone was the IBD stock of the day on Thursday. Double Verify was Tuesday's IBD stock of the day. Ahead of Thursday's opening bell, the Dow rose 0.5%, the S&P moved up 0.3%, and the Nasdaq rose a fraction in morning action. Among ETFs, the Nasdaq tracker, Invesco QQQ Trust, edged narrowly higher, and the SPDR S&P 500 rose 0.1%. The 10-year yield rose 4.13 Thursday after Wednesday's jump to 4.12. The 10-year yield on Wednesday settled at its highest level since July 23, 2008 per Dow Jones market data. Oil prices rose more than 2% Thursday, looking to add to Wednesday's rebounds as China authorities flashed the first signs of easing the country's stringent COVID rules. West Texas Intermediate futures moved above $87 a barrel. Last week, WTI topped $93 a barrel. First-time unemployment is due out at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. First-time claims are expected to rise to 235 versus 228 the previous week. Econoday says, let's see what happens with that. They actually dropped to 214 as the Hurricane Ian effects fade. So I don't know if I actually believe that, but we're coming into midterm season, so they can't have bad news coming out there. I also don't have the backdrop up, which I usually do, which is weird, because I typically do that. But that's what we see coming off the markets. However, if you're going into the markets, there is one thing that you should be watching for today, and that is that even Bezos, who doesn't have to sit in and make some of the same decisions the rest of us do, even Bezos is saying, hey, be careful. From CNBC today, Jeff Bezos is the latest to warn on the economy, saying it's time to batten down the hatches. From Jeff Cox. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos has become the latest corporate leader to warn about the state of the economy, cautioning that rougher times are likely ahead. In a tweet posted Tuesday, the former president and CEO of the online retailing giant echoed the comments that the Goldman Sachs chief executive David Solomon made to CNBC earlier in the day. Yep, the probabilities in this economy tell you to batten down the hatches, Bezos said in a comment attached to a clip of Solomon's Squawk Box interview. And we can actually listen to Solomon here, so let's do that. Come on.
And I think that if you're running a risk-based...
Give me volume.
I think it's a time to be cautious. And I think that if you're running a risk-based business, it's a time to think more cautiously about your risk box, your risk appetite. I think you have to expect that there's more volatility on the horizon. Now, that doesn't mean for sure that we have a really difficult economic scenario, but in the distribution of outcomes, there's a good chance we could have a recession here in the United States. I think it's a time to be cautious.
And I mean, he's right. I got to say this. One of the things that I'm wondering about and worrying about, especially as we see some big whipsaws in the Dow, because we look at it every single day when we come onto the scene here. One of the things that I look at with that is the fact that I think that there is an artificial effort in place to prop the numbers up for power. And that's what a lot of it boils down to as we go through much of what we see here, is a lot of this is astroturfed effort for power. They don't want to give up the reign that they have on DC and DC politics yet. So they need to do whatever they can to bring themselves into power. And that may include coming back up and saying, hey, you know what? This isn't working here. So pump those Dow numbers up. We need to have the old people come back out and vote, and their 401ks are in trouble right now. And I'm honestly worried that, especially with a lot of retirement that I have in 401k and a lot of retirement that a lot of people I know have in 401k, that the big crash is set to come February, March of next year, when the Inflation Production Act actually starts to take effect and we start to see some of this money printing going on, and the student loan forgiveness plan that they seem intent to force through before the midterms come through, even though we haven't seen an EO show up yet. Both of those taking effect after there's a new Speaker of the House and a new punching bag for the mainstream media. So, this is not official financial advice, but I would not get into stocks right now. Solomon, the head of the Wall Street financial giant, said it's time for both corporate leaders and investors to understand the risks building up and to prepare accordingly. Solomon spoke after his firm had just posted quarterly earnings results that beat Wall Street estimates. Yet he said the recession could be looming as the economy deals with persistently high inflation and a Federal Reserve trying to lower prices through a series of aggressive rate increases. I think you have to expect that there's more volatility on the horizon, Solomon said. No, that doesn't mean for sure that we have a really difficult economic scenario, but on the distribution of outcomes, there's a good chance that we have a recession in the U.S. Fed officials have also been warning that a recession is possible as a result of the monetary policy tightening. Though they hope to avoid a downturn, policymakers in September estimated the GDP would grow just 0.2 in 2022 and rebound in 2023. But only to 1.2%. GDP contracted in both the first and second quarters of this year, meaning a commonly held definition of a recession. There have been mixed signals lately from corporate leaders. CEO Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan Chase has been warning of troubles ahead, saying that the situation recently is very, very serious and that the U.S. could slip into a recession in the next 6 months. Which, by the way, what could happen in the next 6 months? I mean, at the point that you've figured out who the next Speaker of the House is going to be and how you're exactly going to go and attack and punching bag that person. Oh, would you look at that? Control of Congress in at least one chamber is set and due and statistically guaranteed to change somewhere within the next 6 months. Never mind those 2 quarters of GDP recession that we've already had. It's all about show. It's all a floor show. So that's what we have for that. All right, let's talk gas prices. Starting with Reuters. Biden to lay out plan to complete emergency oil sales and support U.S. production. From Jarrett Renshaw and Steve Holland. U.S. President Joe Biden will announce a plan on Wednesday to sell off the latest portion of his release from the nation's emergency oil reserve by year's end and detail a strategy to refill the stockpile when prices drop, a senior admin official said. The plan is intended to add enough supply to prevent oil price spikes that could hurt consumers and businesses, while also assuring the nation's drillers the government will swoop in to the market as a buyer if prices plunge too low. Biden's efforts to use federal powers to balance the U.S. oil market underscores just how much the conflict in Ukraine and rampant inflation has reshaped a president who came into office vowing to undo the oil industry and move the country swiftly to a fossil fuel-free future. Boy, say that 5 times fast. Fossil fuel-free future. It also shows the admin desire to keep inflation in check ahead of the midterm election in November, which Biden's fellow Democrats hope to retain control of Congress. Earlier this year, Biden decided to sell 180 million barrels out of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to combat a potential supply crisis brought about by sanctions on oil-rich Russia following its invasion of Ukraine. While the initial plan was to end those sales in November, purchases were slower than expected over the summer, and some 15 million barrels remain unsold. Those will be put for bidding for delivery in December, the senior admin official said, and extra oil could also be made available if needed. If the conditions require, then we'll be prepared, a senior admin official said. Biden will also lay out a plan to refill the emergency reserve in the upcoming years, but only at prices at or below a range of $67 to $72 a barrel for West Texas Intermediate, the U.S. oil benchmark, the official said. Biden's hope is to send a signal to both consumer and producer. He's calling on the private sector in the U.S. to do two things. One is to take the signal and increase production, increasing the investment. And the number two is to make sure that they're taking these profits, as they're benefiting from these markets, that they are continuing to give the consumers the appropriate price, the official said. In recent weeks, the oil industry has grown increasingly concerned the admin might take a drastic step of banning or limiting exports of gasoline or diesel to help build back sagging U.S. inventories. They have called on the admin to take the option off the table, a move officials are unwilling to do. We're keeping all the tools on the table, anything that could potentially help us ensure a stable domestic supply, the official said. So, there are a few things in this that I want to touch on as we go. Number one, 180 million barrels out of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, bringing us to our lowest point in 40 years. Now, this oil reserve was never meant to be a piggy bank, even though that's what Biden was using it for. I think enough of us have seen enough political commentary to understand that. The Strategic Petroleum Reserve, and we'll be talking about that, I think, in the first ABC article. No, the second one. But it was put there to be an emergency stopgap in case there was a massive hurricane or military action on our soil. In case we have to go back and defend Alaska from the Ruskies. At the time that it was incepted, that was actually an issue that was on the table. In case we had to go annex Canada or Mexico, or go deal with cartels somewhere else in Central America, or for the most part, really, just in case we have to have a military action on our soil. That's what it's there for. We buy oil when it's cheap, per barrel, stick some more of it into there, and hold on to it until we need it. I mean, the stuff doesn't really go bad. But what I want to talk about is this here. While the initial plan was to end those sales in November, purchases were slower than expected over the summer, and some 15 million barrels remain unsold. I have a Biden tweet coming up later, and we'll start the ball rolling on some of this here. Why do you think that there are 15 million barrels unsold? It's because the people aren't buying. When we keep hearing, record profit margin, record this, record that, we don't have a record profit margin for any of this. Pre-inflation, we probably did, but that's before the dollar lost 13.5% over 2 years. Gas companies, oil companies, refinery companies, gas stations, all of them make their money by volume. Not price per unit, but by volume. If you have to think about, and I've said this before, first off, the prominence of gas stations in most areas. I live in a small city, a sub 10,000 person city, that has 3 gas stations in it. If one of them wants to go back and undercut the other 2, all that he has to do is go back and drop that price 10 cents if he's really gouging. And the other 2, he'll have lines outside of his station. And the other 2 are going to have to drop their prices in kind if they hope to ever compete. That's the big problem. Again, you're going to hear the blame go to the gas stations. The gas stations are gouging. The gas stations are in no room to gouge. If you're in a small one-horse town with one gas station for the next 20 miles, yeah, you can gouge a little bit there because you have no competition. If you're in a city like Kenosha that has 75 gas stations in it, just one of those gas stations dropping prices by 3 cents means that everybody in that town is going to go to that gas station. Hell, I saw it with Lou Perini's back because I lived on that end of town. There was a station called Lou Perini's down by me. It was privately owned, and they just basically shifted gas to wherever they could get it from. They didn't care whose brand of gas they sold. It was whoever brought in the gas the cheapest. And they didn't do diesel down there. But occasionally, what they would do is they would offer a cash discount. If you came in and paid for it with cash, number one, you had to go into the cashier, which meant that you might buy a bottle of soda, a bag of chips, etc. But it also, because the credit card processing cost them a little bit extra, it allowed them to sell for sometimes only 5 cents below everybody else in town. And whenever they did that, they had lines down 52nd Street to get into their gas station. They make their money by volume. And if you don't have to think about how much gas you're putting in your vehicle, then they're making even more money. When you have to think about it, because you look at it and you say, can I afford to fill my tank, or can I only afford to put 20 bucks in? That's when you start to have problems, especially if you're the oil company. And there again, the emergency reserve could only be refilled at $67 to $72 a barrel, probably inflation adjusted, which means that the price will probably go higher somewhere down the road. For recent memory, and I'm talking about going all the way back to the Clinton admin, when have we had low per barrel prices? Under a Democrat. They inched up under Clinton, they went way up under Obama until he actually got the hint and said, hey, come on, man. Drill, baby, drill. Just drill that oil. We've got a second term to win. So drill that oil. I'm telling you right now, drill it out. It's a kick the can down the road with the energy policy in place, plus the war in Ukraine and OPEC and bans on domestic drilling and permits that go unfilled for domestic drilling. There is next to zero chance that there is going to be $67 to $72 a barrel in his term, and probably in his lifetime at this point, because the more gas the man makes, the less that I think that he's going to make it to the end of his term. So it's going to be that next person's problem. But hey, he's got a plan, I guess. Biden tries to tackle his gas price problem by announcing a sale of 15 million barrels from the strategic reserve. From Megan Vasquez, Betsy Klein, Shauna Mizell. President Biden on Wednesday formally announced the sale of an additional 15 million barrels from the strategic reserve in December as he looks to lower gas prices ahead of the crucial midterm elections. With my announcement today, we're going to continue to stabilize the markets and decrease the prices at a time when the actions of other countries have caused such a volatility, Biden said in a speech from the White House. And I've told my team to be prepared to look further, man. Look for further releases in the months ahead if needed. The president also revealed the admin's plan to purchase oil to refill the emergency reserve, and we talked about that. Refilling the reserve at $70 a barrel, it's a good price for companies, man. And it's a good price for taxpayers. It's critical for our national security. No, what's critical for our national security is you not tapping into the strategic reserve to begin with. You kid-sniffing moron. The president also called on Congress to pass permitting reform to speed up the permitting process for sustainable energy projects. Oh! So it does sound like we're going with drill, baby, drill. Wednesday's announcement of the sale, which amounts to less oil than the U.S. uses in a single day, comes less than 3 weeks before Election Day, making the latest step in the White House's unprecedented attempt to balance global oil markets. The action is expected to fulfill the admin's commitment in March to release a historic 180 million barrels from the SPR over a 6-month period to counter soaring energy prices, triggered before Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But this is CNN, so they're saying that the invasion of Ukraine is the trigger for this. That commitment, which has rolled out regular sales over the last several months, combined with global economic concerns, helped to drive gas prices down for nearly 3 months straight, but a recent OPEC decision to cut oil production targets and sideline refineries also create market pressures. Biden assured us on Wednesday that the SPR release that just happens to be coming right at the time that the trickling down of prices will come right before people go to the election, to go to the polls, is not politically motivated. I don't buy it. Do you buy it? I don't buy it. It's motivated to make sure I can continue to push on what I've been pushing on, and that's making sure there's enough oil that's being pumped by the companies, so that we have a thing, man, to be able to produce the gas that we need here at home, man, and oil that we need here at home, and at the same time keep moving in the direction of providing for alternative energy. That's not what you said at the beginning of your term. Biden argued that although gas prices have fallen every day in the past week, they're not falling fast enough. When the price of gas goes up, other expenses get cut, he said. That's why I've been doing everything in my power to reduce gas prices, since Putin's invasion of Ukraine caused the prices to spike. Earlier Wednesday, Amos Hochstein, a senior advisor for the energy security, suggested the admin will release more if necessary. Any future release, he suggested, would be dependent on global markets and Russia's actions in Ukraine. Well, I think it's a load of shit. Excuse my language. I'm getting more comfortable saying that. We gotta watch it. I gotta watch what I'm saying here, because we are competing with an AM radio audience. That's a review. We'll skip that one. Here we go. The president's announcement. At POTUS tweets out, "Hey, charging excess margins on gas as an unjustified war rages on Europe's doorsteps is wrong. Energy companies, lower your prices. Lower the price you're charging at the pump to reflect what you're paying for the product, man. Come on. You'll still do well, and Americans will get a fairer price too." With a fixed comment from William Maga Blair, who says, "Fixed. Charging excess margins on gas is not happening. Energy companies, thank you for everything you do. Too bad I hate oil, so I will blame you for everything. You will do better, you'll do well if I did better, and Americans would get a fair price too, but I hate America, so..." And again, they keep going back to the excessive margins. They're not charging excessive margins on the gas. Look. Again, I point out the fact. I said it before during the Reuters article, and I'll say it again now. The gas station, the refinery that supplies the gas station, the oil company that supplies the refinery, all three of those entities make money by volume. They do not make money on unit price. There is so much competition in the US market that their competitor can go drop the price of a barrel by $1, or the price of a gallon of gas, if you're at the end user product, by 3 cents. And nobody will go to the initial gas station. Let's use some examples from around the state of Wisconsin here. Now me, I will go out of my way to go fill up at a Shell because I have a really big gas tank. And if I use Shell gasoline, I typically get an extra 100 miles out of a tank. But I'm going to tell you right off the bat, if the Shell is selling at $3.55 and the Quick Trip, where I usually get 100 to 200 miles, depending, 200 miles less if I'm comparing to Shell gas, 100 miles less if I'm comparing to like Mobil or Amoco or BP or something else. If the Shell is selling for $3.55 and the Quick Trip is selling for $3.40, I'm going to go to the Quick Trip. I'm only going to put $20 in at that kind of price, but if you lose, and again, with Lou Perini's, 5 cents off the price of a gallon, when people have 33-gallon tanks now at the time, I was driving around in things that only had 12 to 15-gallon tanks, but when you're in a situation where you've got 30-gallon tanks at a time, your people are filling up 30 at a time, that 5 cents goes a long, long way in the price of gas. So the charting of excess margins, I mean, it could happen, but it would take like nothing. Let's use Shell and Sunoco for an example. If Sunoco, the refinery themselves that supplies Sunoco, just says, you know what, we will start selling gas to the gas station for 5 cents less than what Shell is going to. Sunoco, their price is going to drop, and everyone's going to go to the Sunoco station. The Shell station will be an afterthought. But they're going to keep trying to jack this narrative down your throat because it looks good for the admin and it looks bad for the oil companies. And as we've noted from Democrat policies, and I remember this even from back when I was a Democrat, the way that they stay in power is by telling you that evil billionaires are the source of all your problems. What is the Strategic Petroleum Reserve? This is an interesting article from ABC, from Max Zahn. As rising prices strain the budgets of many Americans, President Biden is set to announce Wednesday moves that aim to address the oil supply shortage behind the cost spike. Most notably, the announcement that includes the release of 15 million barrels of oil from the nation's stockpile known as the Strategic Petroleum Reserve in December. The release accounts for the final 15 million barrels of oil from the 180 million that Biden vowed to release over 6 months. The move renews the question about why the U.S. stockpiles oil, how much oil the reserve has left, and if more oil on the market can bring down gas prices. Well, more oil on the market can, yes, but at what cost? Established after the Arab oil embargo triggered an energy crisis in the early 70s, the SPR provides an emergency source of oil that protects the U.S. against a sudden supply crunch. The reserve, which can reach as many as 714 million barrels, is stored in large, high-security underground salt caverns along the Gulf coastline of Louisiana and Texas. As of October 7th, the reserve stood at 408 million barrels, or 57% of overall capacity, according to the Energy Information Administration. The president retains wide discretion to release oil from the reserve in what he deems an emergency. In such cases, the U.S. sells the oil on the open market, which in theory should bring oil prices down by increasing supply. How often has the U.S. released oil from the reserve? Before the Biden admin, the U.S. oil released oil from the reserve under emergency conditions 3 times since it was founded in 1975. Most recently, in 2011, then-President Barack Obama ordered the release of 30 million barrels alongside additional commitments from allies amid supply disruptions in Libya and elsewhere. The U.S. released oil reserves in 2005 following the devastation of the oil refineries wrought by Hurricane Katrina, plus in 1991 the U.S. Released oil from the reserve at the beginning of the Gulf War in an effort to assuage concerns over oil supply shock from the onset of the conflict. In March, the Biden admin announced a commitment to release 1 million barrels a day for 6 months, 180 million barrels. A move that aimed to alleviate some of the oil supply shortage caused by the Russia-Ukraine war, as well as supply chain bottlenecks. The total release of oil from the Biden admin will reach 180 million barrels by December. For context, the U.S. consumed about 20 million barrels per day last year. EIA showed, in other words, the amount released by the Biden admin equates to roughly 9 days worth of U.S. oil consumption. Analysts say recent releases from oil reserves have reduced gas prices, but other factors have also contributed to the decline in gas prices from a peak in June, including a drop-off in demand after a summer travel surge. A report from the Treasury Department in June found that the release from the Strategic Reserve had accounted for a reduction in gas of 33 cents a gallon. Mark Zandi, chief economist at Moody's, estimates an even larger impact on gas prices. Releases from the Strategic Reserve have reduced oil prices by an estimated close to $10 a barrel, which translates to a saving of about 40 cents a gallon, Zandi told ABC News. Right, but see, the problem is, when they started talking about doing the release, we were up almost $4 a gallon. So that 40 cents is a drop in the bucket. And again, they call it strategic for a reason. It's not about going out and trying to use it as a piggy bank to bring our gas prices down. It's about being there in case we have an emergency. But that's what we see for that. Biden pressures oil companies. We talked about that. Biden says oil companies should ramp up production and cut prices at the pump instead of buying back stock paying dividends. From Emma Rather-Kinery. President Biden said oil companies need to use their record profits to ramp up production rather than enrich shareholders. Hey, my message to the American energy companies is this. You should not be using your profits to buy back stocks or for dividends, man. Not now. Not while a war is raging, Biden said. You should be using these record-breaking profits to increase production and refining, man. Profits at the 6 largest publicly traded oil companies topped $70 billion in the second quarter, Biden said, adding that in the first half of the year, those companies spent $20 billion on buybacks, the most significant buyback in almost a decade. So far, American companies are using that windfall of profits to buy back their own stock, passing that money on to shareholders, not to consumers, he said. Gas prices are averaging $3.85 a gallon in the U.S., dropping off the record high of more than $5 a gallon set in June. With less than 3 weeks until the midterm elections, Americans and polls increasingly put the economy and the price of gas at the top of their concerns. Invest in America for the American people, man. Go broke. Bring down the price you charge at the pump, man, to reflect what you pay for the product. You'll still make a significant profit, and your shareholders will do very well. And the American people will catch the break that they deserve and get a fair price at the pump as well. Biden also officially announced the release of 15 million barrels of crude from the Strategic Reserve. The White House has released about 165 million barrels of crude from the reserve since the beginning of the year, out of a total that would be around 180 million. So, and the rest of this is also a review with that again. And again, you talk about the fact, oh, well, we were going to release 180 million barrels a day, or 9 days worth of oil. But they only bought 165 million. That's because people aren't driving as much. Because the gas is so artificially high, based on OPEC production cuts, based on, yes, the war in Ukraine, and the fact that we are limited. And I'm not going to be one of these people that says, oh, we're not doing any drilling here. But we are limited in the amount of drilling that we can do here because of government regulation. All those things are going to cause a reduction in the price. An increase in the price. And what really gets me, by the way, is the fact that, these news outlets and Biden know that a production cut is going to raise the price per barrel. They know that it is a supply shock thing. OPEC came out and said, oh, we're cutting production because price per barrel is going down too fast. So it's not what the oil companies are getting and doing. They're buying it at market value just like everybody else. And again, I remind you that the oil company is going to make a lot more money if gas is 91 cents a gallon than they are if it's $4.90 a gallon. Because the less that you have to think about buying that product, the more they're going to make. All right, let's talk Stacey Abrams. Now we're going to start here with what it is that she had to say, and then we'll talk about some of the pushback to this, including a video of Karine Jean-Pierre, token diversity hire, going back and forth with Peter Doocy. But let's start with this.
I just asked you. You're running for governor of Georgia. I would assume, maybe incorrectly, but while abortion is an issue, it nowhere reaches the level of interest of voters in terms of the cost of gas, food, bread, milk, things like that. What can a governor, what could you do as governor to alleviate the concerns of Georgia voters about those livability, daily, hourly issues that they're confronted with?
But let's be clear. Having children is why you're worried about your price for gas. It's why you're concerned about how much food costs. For women, this is not a reductive issue. You can't divorce being forced to carry an unwanted pregnancy from the economic realities of having a child. And so it's important for us to have both and conversations. We don't have the luxury of reducing it or separating them out, but we also have to talk about what a governor can do. A governor can address housing prices. A governor can address the cost of education. A governor can put money into the pockets of everyday hardworking Georgians instead of giving tax cuts to the wealthy. That's what I talk about on the trail, and that's what's resonating. But let's not pretend that women, half the population, especially those of childbearing age, they understand that having a child is absolutely an economic issue. It is only politicians who see it as simply another cultural conversation. It is a real biological and economic imperative conversation that women need to have.
Ms. Abrams, this is Eddie Glaude. I want, first of all, congratulations. We're both going to be celebrating.
That is evil. I don't know if she even intended for that to come out like that. And I will give Stacey Abrams the benefit of the doubt. That I don't think that she meant to come out and say, if you're poor, yeet your kid. But that's how it came out. That's exactly how it came out. Reading from the New York Post. Stacey Abrams outrageously suggests abortion can help voters' wallets amid inflation fears. From Caitlin Dornbos. Georgia Democratic gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams shocked political observers by saying Wednesday that abortion is an economic issue. As surveys suggest, more American voters are concerned about rising inflation than the overturn of Roe v. Wade. Having children is why you're worried about the price of gas and how much your food costs, Abrams told MSDNC's of Morning Joe. For women, this is not a reproductive issue, she added. You can't divorce being forced to carry out an unwanted pregnancy from the economic realities of having a child. Women, half the population, especially those of childbearing age, they understand that having a child is absolutely an economic issue, Abrams went on. It is only politicians who see it as simply another cultural conversation. It is a real biological and economic imperative conversation that women need to have. Abrams' comments, part of an ongoing push by Democrats to refocus attention on abortion rights, were ripped by conservative critics. I didn't really expect Democrats to go with, it's cheaper to feed your family if you kill a few of them, as a closing argument, yet here we are, remarked National Review writer Dan McLaughlin. Stacey Abrams, with a modest proposal, tweeted National Review senior writer Michael Brendan Doherty, referring to Jonathan Swift's classic 1729 satire that suggested poor Irish people sell their children as food to the wealthy to prevent them from being a burden. This is the Democratic Party, lamented Andy Biggs. Demonic. Despicable, agreed Ted Cruz. I can't believe this needs to be said, but ending a human life is not the solution for inflation. Dana Lash tweets out, those stupid babies are ruining the economy, she basically says. And that's really the reality of all this. Kill your kids if you're too poor to have your kids. You know, the option is never, oh, well, just maybe not screw or not screw unprotected if you're that worried about it. And it always seems to be instead, you know, screw as much as you want and then go kill the kids. And I don't know about this. I mean, this is evil. This is wicked. I almost think that this was a step going down in the direction of, hey, if you want to save society and save yourself from inflation, sacrifice your babies to Moloch. It's definitely a possibility. From Fox News, White House dodges after Biden endorsed Stacey Abrams, says abortion can help cut inflation. From Anders Hagstrom. White House press secretary, token diversity hire, dodged questions about Georgia gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams' claims that abortion can help alleviate inflation on Wednesday. Steve Doocy noted that President Biden has endorsed Abrams and asked whether he stood by Abrams' comments. Diversity hire refused to respond, saying that she hadn't heard about the viral incident. Abrams came under fire Wednesday for her comments on MSDNC. Let's listen.
Thank you. So you're asking oil companies to further lower gas prices. What makes you think that they are going to listen to an administration that is ultimately trying to put them out of business?
How is the administration trying to put them out of business?
Well, they produce fossil fuels, and this president says he wants to end fossil fuel.
So look, you kind of asked me this question yesterday, and here's where we would say U.S. oil production is up and on track to reach a record high next year. We've seen that from from when we see their profit margins. It's record high. And so, in fact, the United States has produced more oil in President Biden's first year than under Trump's administration's first year, but at the same time, oil companies are raking in record profits, while more than 9,000 approved drilling permits remain untapped by the oil industry. There is no shortage of opportunity or incentive for oil companies to ramp up production. This is something that they can actually do. It is available to them. They can do this, and also they are getting the profits. And so because they're getting, I just showed 60 cents on the chart, more profit, right, that we're seeing, more higher costs that we're seeing than what retailers are paying at the pump. They can bring that down. They've done it before. You saw that at the chart in the beginning. They were able to bring prices down.
And one more that folds in the president's top domestic priorities. In Georgia, the president's endorsed candidate for governor, Stacey Abrams, is suggesting that one way to mitigate the effects of inflation is to get an abortion. Does President Biden agree?
I did not see her comments on this, so I don't know the context of this. Again, I want to be careful because this is a political debate, and it's related to a midterm, an election. I'm not going to comment on that.
I'm not going to comment on that because I don't have an answer to that, is what she really should have said. look, as far as Abrams go, and one of the things that's unfortunate about this is this, if you're talking to progressives, actually is a mainstream position that they have. I'm too poor to have a baby. This one-toothed guy that I just met a few weeks ago, yeah, he's got a really, really big one. And I really enjoyed that, but, the condom broke, or I told him not to, and he did anyway. Or I told him to, but I can't afford to have his kid. What am I going to do? I mean, I'm too poor to have a kid right now. That's one of the big reasons that's listed in Planned Parenthood. Every time they go back and release their statistics of why people have abortions. That's one of the top ones. Is, I just can't afford it right now. That's a constant. That's a consistent. But the big one for that is, when you're talking to independents or even Republicans in a very, very red area, like most of Georgia outside of Atlanta, the conversation is always, the evil Republicans want to take away just in case you're ever raped or your brother comes and diddles you or something like that. They don't usually go down the economic side of it. I'm very surprised that Abrams did. Again, I almost think that this was a gaffe or an accident. I know Horatius doesn't agree with me, but I almost think that was a gaffe or an accident. Or maybe it is. Sacrifice your child to Moloch, and he will promise you good fortune. An interesting side note as we talk about what's coming in here and what we're going to be coming into after the midterms. The Blaze, Daniel Horowitz puts out an analysis. Why is Kevin McCarthy not speaking out against the impending omnibus that destroys his leverage? And it's a good question, especially when we're talking about domestic and foreign policy as well. From Daniel Horowitz, record excess deaths and illness, record inflation, record supply shortages, record crime, record illegal immigration, a bureaucracy that surveils, spies on, and persecutes political opponents, and a collapsing culture that teaches grooming and racism in school. Never has an incumbent party been this vulnerable headed into a midterm election, and never has an emerging opposition party been granted so much political capital to change the course following that election. Yet, unless Kevin McCarthy, the presumptive speaker in waiting, and I know Daniel is right, and I still hate that. I would give anything to see literally anybody other than Kevin McCarthy be the Speaker of the House if Republicans take it. Because he's just like Ron Johnson. When the Jesus wing of the Republican Party's in control, he is warmonger Jesus. And when he can hitch his wagons out to MAGA, because it keeps him in power, he hitches that wagon to MAGA. He has no principles, he just has power. Just like the monoparty, just like Ron Johnson, just like the rest of the Democrats. Uses his robust clout within the party to oppose the impending omnibus bill, the entire leverage and political capital of the midterms will become worthless. Money, budget bills, talks, congressional hearings walk. House Republicans are salivating to hold hearings on some, but not all, of the aforementioned criminal acts of the Biden admin, but no relief will come to the American people absent the use of the budget process as leverage to force changes in the funding and policy of the most contentious issues of our time. Republicans know all too well that any standalone messaging bill, much less a mere hearing, will die in the Senate and will not become law. Placing those priorities, however, in budget bills and standing behind them is the only way to force a national debate and brinksmanship over the issues that matter, but that leverage is now hanging by a thread. In late September, 22 Republicans, including the Turtle Man, voted for a continuing resolution to fund the government and all its immoral and illegal tyranny until December 16th. rather than filibustering the bill until our grievances are redressed or extending the deadline into next year so a GOP-controlled House could rewrite the budget. They kicked it until right before Christmas break with the intention of passing an omnibus bill. Unless there is a massive campaign from inside and outside the GOP ranks, Republican senators will cut the legs out from under the new majority by funding Biden's autocratic government without reforms all the way until fiscal year 2024. Yes. And I said this at the time. When they started talking about this, I said this at the time. There should have been a push to get the CR to go at least until January 15th. There should have been a major push to get it to go up until then. Because right now, by the time they come up to go have the conversation over whether to have a CR or whether to have an omnibus, everybody's going to know what's going to happen in Congress. We're going to know exactly where, because we'll have 6 weeks and all the votes will be counted by then. And we will know exactly who's going to be seated in January. Which at that time, the Democrats and, yes, their Republican allies, who can't bear to see the government shut down, will come out and say, no, we accept this long-term plan from our Democrat colleagues, and we will put it forward to Biden's desk until 2024, and it'll be December of 2024, and we'll never have to worry about the government shutdown again. One obvious player in this has been jarringly silent. Kevin McCarthy will likely become the most important Republican in America as the presumed Speaker of the House next year. He will fully control the body of government closest to the people, and the one that is fully controlled by the majority party. Of all people, he should be lying down on the tracks of the opposition to allowing Democrats to write the budget for the rest of the fiscal year, thereby undercutting his entire leverage to fight any of Biden's extremely unpopular policies in the budget as soon as he commands the gavel in January. Yet he was stone silent and remains so to this very day. It was only the Freedom Caucus that demanded the budget be extended into early next year with the expiration deadline that would empower the new House majority. Which begs the obvious question, what is McCarthy's motivation in becoming Speaker? I really, really, really hope that he's not the one that comes up as Speaker. Please. And what exactly does he plan to do if he fails to publicly call on McConnell to pass a simple CR in December, rather than a full-year omnibus? That would be a sign that he views the budget leverage as a liability to be avoided rather than an opportunity, the only legislative opportunity to bring our 2 years of grievances to the brink. If McCarthy were true to his campaign rhetoric, he would demand that McConnell pass a CR until February. Here's how it would play out. As soon as he becomes Speaker, he would work on a budget bill for the remainder of fiscal year 2023 for a month. That bill would contain some or all of the following provisions: prohibiting all funding for Pfizer or Moderna COVID products, ban on all biomedical mandates with civil and criminal fines for government workers who defy the law, prohibiting all funding for granting any release, transportation, or status to illegal aliens crossing the border, prohibiting all new funding for Ukraine, prohibiting all FBI actions taken against political opponents, and severe defunding of most of the agency's operations. Do you really think McConnell would go along with any of this? I'm only halfway through the list, and I know that McConnell will look at this and say, no, we've got to just slow down these Democrats. We'll let them have whatever they want, but they have to take it a little bit slower than they want it. A complete reversal of the Inflation Reduction Act, along with the funding of the 87,000 IRS agents and climate mandates. A complete defunding of all mandates and regulations that encumber our energy and food production and supply, and a complete defunding of all transgender policies in the federal government. If you still want it at the state level, vote in your state house. Every day, Republicans would give speeches and do media drawing attention to the devastating consequences of each of the aforementioned policies and why they need to be blocked and defunded. Then they would pass their version of the budget and dare the Senate and White House to decline to sign it in favor of promoting the terrible policies the American people just voted against. But of course, they're not going to do that. Kevin McCarthy is one of them. And if he becomes the speaker, he's just going to pretty much roll over for whatever it is the Biden admin wants. He'll make some good bluster and some big speeches, but he'll roll over for whatever the Biden admin wants. He's just like Paul Ryan in that matter, actually. From the Daily Wire. And I actually have my Google search for mainstream media topics for this, because I didn't really want to take this one from the Daily Wire, but, you know, wouldn't you know it, it's so hard to find something from CNN, MSDNC about this particular topic. From the Daily Wire, Hunter Biden's laptop documents at least 459 legal violation, watchdog group says. From Luke Rosiak, a year-long exploration of Hunter's laptop yielded a 630-page report that its authors say documents 459 violations of state and federal laws and regulations by President Biden's son and business partners. Marco Polo. Marco! I'll watch the chat for you guys to respond in kind. A nonprofit rather, formed by a one-time aide to former President Trump, enabled a team of cyber gumshoes to take a deep dive into a laptop that the crack-addled Biden left at a Delaware repair store. Claims the report is a roadmap for local, state, or federal prosecutors to pursue charges. The group also sent its report to each member of Congress. The timing of the report's release, coming 2 weeks before the midterm elections, has a certain symmetry to the laptop's initial introduction to the public in 2020, days before the election. The New York Post published news of the laptop's existence, as well as bombshells from it, but social media suppressed the story after the FBI had warned companies of so-called misinformation. This time around, the timing is similar, but other factors are reversed. Legacy outlets have acknowledged the laptop's files are authentic. Jack Dorsey admitted that censoring the laptop was a mistake. That's a problem, Tim. And we're looking into it. And the social media platform is being sold to free speech advocate Elon Musk. The team, put together by Garrett Ziegler, Marco Polo's 26-year-old founder, has mined the laptop with digital savvy and produced a thorough report that is anything but vague or superficial, weighing in at a gigabyte, because the number of screenshots from the laptop. I've been focusing on this for 13 months, Ziegler told the Daily Wire. It was really a thing of necessity. I recognized how rich the material was. It requires utter focus. It's so hard to write something comprehensive about it and do anything else on the side. There's been some phenomenal writing so far on the sex and degeneracy, he's added. The focus of the report is on crimes. I had a compulsion to log every crime, even the state-level statutes. The mission is simple: hold Republicans' feet to the fire. We don't want to hear that Republicans need another year to do an investigation. I've done that here. Right, but they actually do have to investigate. And I like what Marco Polo is doing, but Congress, if they're going to do anything, does have to do an investigation on the veracity of your sources. Otherwise, it's hearsay. I like the idea, but I do understand the veracity. They need to have bulletproof proof that this is what it claims to be. Crimes Hunter Biden allegedly committed include serving as an agent for foreign entities without disclosing it, tax fraud, and falsifying business documents. The alleged crimes also include prostitution, non-consensual pornography, and distribution of narcotics. And we have what appears to be a short list of the crimes. This is not 459 rather. I don't know if this is the full list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 1, 2, 3. Oh, 459! No, I'm just joking. There's 24 there. This report would not been necessary if law enforcement had done its job, the report's introduction said. So I searched for this. I wanted to see if CNN was covering this. I wanted to see if NBC, ABC, or anything else was covering this. So I Googled it. There's no news on this anywhere. In fact, the last news story about this, here's how the Post analyzed Hunter Biden's laptop from the Washington Post on 2022-03-30. Or the New York Mag, September 12th, 2022. Or Slate, September 20th, 2022. Funnily enough, there's nothing about the article that we just read. Somebody want to handle the YouTube side? I don't know which YouTube it is, but can somebody handle that? Thank you. And even if we go over to the news tab, we have one from OK Magazine, which is not green check verified. And The Sun, which is also not green check verified. And then the next thing here is New York Mag and a completely unrelated story from Fox News from 2 weeks ago. So, the only thing close to green check verification is missing link Daily Wire. Odd. I wonder why CNN won't cover this. Can anybody answer that? Does anybody know why CNN will not cover this? I couldn't tell you. Fetterman's in the news, and we've got a couple things I like and a couple things I hate here, so we'll see if we can get through power through the rest of the stuff here, including an AOC video that I found at the end of last night, but I've not watched yet. From NBC 8, WGAL, out of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, U.S. Senate candidate John Fetterman releases updated medical report from doctor. No author given. U.S. Senate candidate John Fetterman has released an updated medical report from his doctor. It comes after an office visit on October 14th. According to the report, Fetterman is recovering well from his stroke, and his health has continued to improve, and he has no work restrictions and can work full duty in public office. The report also stated Fetterman spoke intelligently with an advertisement from AVG. No, I'm not going to buy AVG cleaner right now. Without cognitive deficits, the doctor noted that Fetterman is still exhibiting symptoms of an auditory processing disorder that can come across as hearing difficulty. His communication is significantly improved compared to his first visit by speech therapy, which he has attended on a regular basis since the stroke, the report said. Fetterman's opponent, Mehmet Oz, has been critical of his health, saying Fetterman isn't fit to run after suffering a stroke. While Oz was in York Wednesday morning, News 8 asked him whether he'd seen the updated medical report. Well, I saw it, and I'm thrilled. Good news for him. All along I've been saying, either you're lying about your health or you're not willing to own the radical left policies you've been advocating for. So I think this now frees us all up comfortably to say we should have a real debate, he said. Oz went on to say he's no longer worried about Fetterman's health, but about his ideas. Oz was in New York, not New York, to serve as guest speaker at the Rotary Club luncheon. Yeah, he was actually in
Lieutenant
New
Governor
York
John Fetterman
in York proper, not Old New Amsterdam. Why they changed it, I can't say. Maybe they liked it better that way. But something else about this was a little bit off, and our friends over at the Daily Wire sleuthed this out and talked about it here. Fetterman campaign releases doctor's report saying he's in good health. The doctor is one of his campaign donors. From John Rigolizzo. The doctor, who endorsed Democrat Pennsylvania Senate candidate John Fetterman's health, donated hundreds of dollars to his campaign. The Fetterman campaign released a report from his primary care doctor Wednesday saying Fetterman is in good health and will be able to fulfill his duties as a senator if he's elected. But Dr. Clifford Chen has donated more than $1,300 to Fetterman's camp and totaled nearly $2,500 in donations to Democrats in closely contested races nationwide. The report is the latest development in Fetterman's recovery from a massive stroke, which is front and center in the Pennsylvania Senate contest. Yeah, if your doctor is your donor, then you probably should not be taking his advice. Because if he's donating that kind of money to you and then to Democrat candidates, I'm guessing he's going to want a return on investment. Overall, the lieutenant governor is recovering well from his stroke, and his health and has continued to improve, Chen wrote, noting that Fetterman's physical exam was normal, and he has returned to normal strength and coordination in all four extremities. He spoke intelligently about cognitive deficit. His speech was normal, and he continues to exhibit symptoms of auditory processing disorder, which can come across as a hearing difficulty. Well, then you'll be all good to debate, right? Somehow I doubt that's going to be the case. One left over from yesterday. Illegal teacher strike causes school closures that impact over 13,000 students. Maybe I have the auditory problem or the reading problem. Maybe I'm John Fetterman from Candace Hathaway. In Mass, it's illegal for public employees to go on strike, but that did not stop teachers in Haverhill and Malden. Malden is on the Fallout 4 map. I know where that is. Actually, I know where Haverhill is too, but that's from my personal life. Schools were forced to cancel classes on Monday after teachers across the state chose to hit the picket lines over deadlocked contract negotiations. Teachers from both districts requested higher pay, smaller class sizes, and better school conditions. Union members of the Malden Education Association and the Haverhill Education Association voted to strike after all-day negotiations, with their schools failed to end in an agreement. We are looking to try to mitigate the impact on inflation, Malden teacher Douglas Diaz told WCVP TV. With it being over 8% and our teachers being underpaid, we can't accept a 2.5% increase. It's a pay cut. Well, yeah, that's everything right now is a pay cut. Malden Public Schools Department Attorney Howard Greenspan, Greenspan, told the news outlets the school board requested the assistance of a mediator to continue the negotiations. Both the Malden and Haverhill public school systems issued statements ahead of time to warn the parents of the possible strikes. Since the negotiations were unsuccessful, classes and after-school activities were canceled for Monday. Over 7,000 children are enrolled at Haverhill Public Schools, which include 17 schools from pre-K through 12th grade. Malden Public Schools included 6 schools with over 6,000 students. Apparently, in Fallout lore, there is a vault under Malden Public School. I think it's the elementary school, if I remember correctly. I'd have to go and check that again. But we're not going to load up Fallout 4 right now to go check. The Haverhill Education Association stated that the teachers have worked for over 100 days without a contract. Even after multiple rounds of negotiations with the school board, the union reported, "We have reached not a single tentative agreement." Educators have put forward proposals on racial justice, health and safety, and other working conditions that have a direct impact on the quality of education we can provide students attending Haverhill Public Schools. The Haverhill Education Association wrote in a statement, "Our students deserve and need more diverse teaching force. They deserve and need to be in suitable learning environments. They deserve and need educators who have time to prepare, plan, and collaborate with colleagues." So, well, I guess if you're in Malden or Haverhill, hooray, you got a day off from school. How much more time do we have? 15 minutes. Let's get this other school one out of the way, and then we'll do the rest tomorrow. We'll have 3 left over because we're watching this video too. Missouri school to close after radioactive waste report from Jim Salter. Florissant. I know somebody from Florissant. A Missouri school board decided Tuesday to shut down a grade school that sits near a contaminated creek after a study funded by law firms involving a class action lawsuit found high levels of radioactive material inside the school. And again, we have a Fallout reference, but I'll touch on that in a second. Contamination was in a classroom, the playground, and elsewhere at Jana Elementary School in Florissant, Missouri, according to a report last week by Boston Chemical Data Corps. It follows another study by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers made public in the summer that found contamination stemming from World War II-era nuclear weapons production in a wooded area near Coldwater Creek. The Hazelwood Board of Education voted in closed session Tuesday to close the school until it can be cleaned up. Virtual learning will start Monday and is planned until the students can be moved to different schools. Tentatively scheduled for November 28th, it's unclear whether Jana Elementary would reopen. The school board, in a statement after the closed meeting, said the remediation is necessary but acknowledged this is causing disruption to our students' education and school climate. The decision came even after Corps officials raised questions about the Boston Chemical study. Philip Moser, program manager at the Corps' formerly utilized site's Remedial Action Program in St. Louis, said the agency's evaluations found no contamination between the wooded site and the school or its playgrounds. He called the Boston Chemical report incomplete and not consistent with the approved processes required to do an evaluation of our sites. Well, yeah, I'm sure that the government investigated itself and found that the government did nothing wrong. They typically do investigate themselves. Oh, no. Oh, we were making nuclear weapons near this elementary school? Oh, no, it's totally fine now. Don't worry about any of that now. No, we'll be fine. Just don't worry about any of that. And again, I come with the Fallout reference because, I mean, those of you who are with me on my Fallout 3 journey will remember at the very beginning of the game, one of the first sites that we went to, the Springvale Elementary School, just outside of where Dulles is in real life and where Vault 101 is in game. After we went to Megaton, the first thing we did is went into the elementary school, but we also took a tour around it after we cleared the raiders out and the ants. The damned ants. And noted that by the flagpole, by the radio tower, there was an excessive amount of dumped radioactive waste in a fenced-in container 12 feet away from the back of the elementary school. But I'm sure that even in the Fallout universe, the government also investigated themselves and found that they had done nothing wrong. Alright. Let's listen to this AOC video. And again, by the way, full disclosure, I have not pre-listened to this, so I have no idea what's coming here. All I know is End Wokeness tweets out, "Is AOC okay?" And then we'll do a couple things I like and a couple things that I hate and head out of here for the day. So, for a 6-second clip, is AOC okay? Let's find out. I think somebody quote tweeted this and asked if she had a hot sauce moment, so I'm thinking that this might have something to do with racism or racialism.
All right, listen, okay, listen.
Did she just do an impression of me doing an impression of her? Because if you'll remember, back when we were doing the Red Net show, Elaine pointed out on numerous occasions that she doesn't actually talk like that. Like the way that I do my AOC impression. And yet, there she is, doing it right there.
All right, listen, okay, listen.
I'm kind of glad I did that. Okay, papi, listen, okay, papi. All right, listen. That's amazing. I am glad I put that on that. I'm glad I picked that one up before we got started. Oh, that's amazing. I did not pre-read that. That was raw impression of that. I'm still laughing about that. All right, let's do a couple things I like and a couple things that I hate. So sometimes we talk about what I've been watching on the streaming services because I don't really watch TV. Sometimes we talk about the video games that I've been playing, and sometimes we talk about the music that I listen to on things that I like. Usually it's a filler if I can't find something else to go on thing that I like, but I do have something else that I like on the deck for the day. But, going down and sometimes Spotify actually does a really, really good job of mixing out and finding similar kinds of music if you go onto your artist radio. So I've been, for so long, for a very, very long time, until very recently, the only thing that I listened to was news podcasts. And then when I started studying for a real estate license, I put that up on the back burner and I just stopped listening to all news podcasts. But I mean, that was almost a 24/7 thing. I listened to Poole, Shapiro, all the Daily Wire people. I did listen to Styx, and I do still listen. I like Styx because he does have a cultural aspect to it. And even though it'll probably rankle some of my more religious friends, I do enjoy the occult, and I've read some of Styx's occult books. I enjoy that kind of thing, mostly because I've always enjoyed studying how religion started from a non-religious aspect, like how anthropologists view the start of religion. But I'd stopped almost entirely listening to music. So I would say that for a while I actually probably started forgetting about some of the music that's out there. And it's a shame because there was really good stuff out. And the all-time low radio station on Spotify reminded me of this somewhat known but sometimes forgotten about Christian alternative band Relient K, who kind of cropped up out of nowhere and just kind of disappeared out of nowhere too. They weren't as popular as some of the other big names out of them, but people still really knew who they were. So I went back and I started listening to their catalog and realized how much fun it was, and found this song on their catalog that I also very much liked. And I know we'll probably take in chunks because we'll probably get demonetized for listening to this, but hey, you know what else though? I'm already demonetized because I did it myself on YouTube. So Relient K, Christian rock band who named themselves after their drummer's car, except changing the name, or changing one letter so they wouldn't run into copyright, with the great Daimler Chrysler company, Plymouth, came out and, they've done a different kind of music. If you listen to their music, it does have a very, very positive tone to it. It's not like listening to All Time Low, especially when you hear them on stage when they're doing a live performance. A lot of F-bombs, a lot of swearing, a lot of sort of unclean stuff. And, they've got the regular pop, we're dating, we're doing this is life, this is real life kind of thing to it. But one of the reasons I liked Relient K was because that they had a more positive message. They're not outright screaming Jesus, Jesus at the top of their lungs, but like a lot of bands that aren't necessarily gospel bands, but still called Christian, the message is positive. Like Skillet, that's another good one. That's another good example. A positive message without full out always being gospel all the time. So let's listen to Relient K covering one of the greatest songs from what was formerly one of my favorite bands in the world until they started getting political, Cake. Relient K doing Cake's The Distance.
reluctantly crouched at the starting line. Engines pumping and thumping in time. The green light flashes, the flags go up. Churning and burning, they yearn for the cup. They deftly maneuver and muscle for rank. Fuel burning fast on an empty tank. Reckless and wild, they pour through the turns. Their prowess is potent and secretly stern. As they speed through the finish, the flags go down. The fans get up and they get out of town. The arena is empty, except for one man still driving and striving as fast as he can. The sun has gone down and the moon has come up. And long ago somebody left with the cup, but he's driving and striving and holding the turns and thinking of someone for whom he still burns. Well, he's going the distance. Well, he's going for speed. Well, she's all alone in a time of need. Because he's racing and pacing and plotting the course. He's fighting and fighting and riding on his horse. Well, he's going the distance.
All right, Reliant K. Go check them out if you haven't, or even if you haven't for a while, because I don't know if they've been really active for maybe a few years, but even if you haven't for a while, Be My Escape is probably one of my favorite Reliant K. Well, I think that's everybody's favorite Reliant K song. I think everybody knows that one, but yeah, go check them out. By the way, in that cover too, with my headphones, because the last time I listened to this song, it was on the computer at work, and they've only got just a crappy little iHome speaker. Now that I can actually hear somewhat well off of this, I love the bass line in that song. That was something that was not present in the original Cake version, and it sounds fantastic. So, that's what we see for that. Other thing that I like today, something that goes onto the strength of us doing a program like this and you guys coming to watch every morning here. Reading from The Hill, nearly 60% see mainstream media as a threat to democracy, according to a poll. From Dominic Mastrangelo. More than half of all registered voters see the mainstream media as a threat to American democracy, according to a new poll. Based! A New York Times Siena College poll published Tuesday found 59% of voters view the media as a major threat to democracy, while 25% say the press is a minor threat and only 15% say it poses no threat. The divide fell sharply along partisan lines, with 87% of voters who supported former President Trump in 2020 indicating they view the media as a major threat, while 33% of Biden voters during that election cycle said the same thing. I'm surprised it's that high. I'm gonna come right out and say I'm surprised it's that high. Overall, 71% of voters agree that democracy is under threat, while only 7% of voters rank a threat to democracy as a major issue this midterm election cycle. An annual Gallup poll survey, also published this week, found only 34% of Americans believe major news organizations will report fully, accurately, and fairly. Again, I'm actually surprised it's that high. On current events, only slightly higher than in 2016, the lowest percentage the polling firm has ever recorded. The New York Times Siena College poll was conducted from October 9th to October 12th among 793 registered voters and has a margin of error of 4 percentage points rather. Why do we do this? Why do we talk about this? Well, first off, number one, the first thing I'm going to say to you is I am biased. My goal is to see a world where people are not reliant on the government. Where people look at the government and say, okay, that's cool. I'm glad that we have a fire department, but yeah, we don't need you to do, we don't need your safety nets, we don't need this else. We figured out how to do this all privately. Yes, oh, thank you for building those roads, even though I personally hate those roads. But we don't need you to do our healthcare for us. Oh, thank you for finding a place that we can take this murderer off the streets. But really, we don't need to concern ourselves if somebody's smoking a bowl in the back of his apartment. That's what I would like to see going forward into government. And I think a lot of you are actually in mostly the same boat. But, again, the issues that actually affect us. That's what I'm here for. I'm not unbiased. But I also won't cover up reporting if it's devastating out to my narrative. It's just that lately, there hasn't really been anything that's devastating to my narrative. Where these people will cover things up, just like we saw with up here. Oh, where are we going to find anything about the Biden laptop? Oh, not on the front page of Google. Oh, we don't even have a news section on the front page. We actually have to go to the news tab to find anything. And there, it's only OK Magazine and The Sun, 2 tabloids, talking about it. Well, we'll just cover that up because it's inconvenient truth. Twitter, ban anybody who shares this story. And it's not just the media, it's the media and the tech firms and everything else. Because, I mean, the New York Post is mainstream media. But I'm glad to see that people are starting to look at this, because that means that they're going to go back and look to people. Unfortunately, they're going to look to people like Shapiro and Poole, and not people like myself, like Ignoramus, like Styx, who are actually just literally doing this in our living rooms. But any move is a good move. And it also kind of reminds me, you remember that crazy-eyed bastard Dabrowski that we see videos from on here from time to time. I haven't seen anything from him for a while. He's been on Twitter doing his usual stick, but it's all spoken word. He hasn't made one of those, I'm angry videos for a long time. But even he's been out there like, oh, well, it's time to dump CNN because they've turned into a right-wing repository. Even though every time I read CNN, they're still majorly biased to the left, but they're actually questioning the narrative now. So, yes, I'm very glad to see where people are turning off The Hill, turning off MSDNC, turning off NBC, CNN, and actually looking at alternatives from people who have had to make some of the same decisions that these people have had to make. Let the rich people go to CNN. The people reporting the news are their people. And now for a couple things that I hate. You knew this was coming. You knew this one was coming. Because I told you this one was coming here. We talked about this on Monday, or Tuesday rather, because this was on Twitter trending. But we will read from the Washington Post, where democracy goes to die in darkness. New York City restaurant and celeb hotspot briefly bans abusive James Corden. From Brian Pietsch. Balthazar, a storied haunt for New York celebrities and power players, briefly banned comedian James Corden after he berated employees on multiple occasions, the restaurant owner said, calling him a tiny cretin of a man and the most abusive customer in Balthazar's history. Keith McNally, the owner of Balthazar and other popular New York City restaurants, said in an Instagram post on Monday that he did not often 86 a customer, meaning banning or refusing service to someone, but that Corden had earned it after 2 incidences where he mistreated workers at the French restaurant. In June, McNally said Corden demanded that a round of drinks come this second and that his previous drinks become comped because he had found a hair in his food. After finishing his main course, Corden was extremely nasty to the manager, McNally said. On another occasion this month, Corden came to the restaurant with his wife for brunch and complained to their server that there was a little bit of egg white in her egg yolk omelet. McNally said the dish was remade, but sent out with the wrong side, home fries instead of a salad, which was apparently the last straw from Corden. You can't do your job, Corden said, but the server, according to McNally, citing a manager's report from the incident, maybe I should go into the kitchen and cook the omelet myself. When Corden erupted at the server, 3 glasses of champagne were brought over to smooth things over. The episode left the server very shaken. A representative for Corden did not immediately respond to a request for comment. A manager at Balthazar declined to comment when reached by phone late Monday evening. McNally's ban on Corden, it was not the first time he had taken it to Instagram to bar a customer from his restaurants. Last year, he publicly banned editor Graydon Carter from Orandi, an Italian restaurant in New York City, after he said Carter didn't show for a 12-person reservation. McNally said at the time that he had brought in extra workers to ensure that the lunch went perfectly for him, and that Carter had reneged on the reservations on other occasions at his restaurants, including Balthazar. McNally has a reputation for being provocative, at least in his Instagram posts, and defenses of controversial celebrities. He has defended Woody Allen, whose daughter Dylan accused him of sexual abuse. Amid backlash over that, and an incident which he told a woman on Instagram that she looked like a hooker, McNally told the Daily Beast that despite being a Democrat, I hate cancel culture and political correctness. So, and it looks like this is a very well-documented phenomenon for Corden, and also, by the way, this Graydon Carter here. I think that honestly, for the reservation, 86ing a person is probably an extreme step, except maybe if he's got a pattern of it, which it appears that he does. But for the most part, I wouldn't fire a customer over canceling on reservations. I might not take his reservations for him anymore, but I wouldn't fire a customer for that. But as far as Corden goes, no, and this is, by the way, coming from a person who worked in that industry for a long time. I have an uncle who is still in that industry today, and my mom was in that industry and she was actually on the floor as waitstaff until an injury took her out of that workforce. We're looking at situations right now where these people act like this and they think they can get away with it because they're celebrities. They think that the little people have to come back and cater to them. This is the exact kind of attitude. That is the reason that Washington is in the state that it's in, especially as they become more celebrity at this time. I mean, what was it? Maybe 6 years ago, you didn't know who a person in AOC's position was. You knew who the president was and maybe the Speaker of the House, but you didn't know a random representative from New York or a random rep from Florida or anything else like that. And these people think that they are our gods because they happen to control laws that affect us directly. And same thing with the media. Corden thinks because he's on TV, people worship him. He can get away with anything. And they can go back onto a show and say, well, the manager of Balthazar's 86'd me. And a bunch of people who could never afford to go to Balthazar anyway will look up and say, oh, I'll never go to Balthazar again. When you could just be a decent person. You really could. And for another thing that I hate, as we get ready to go back and play God again, Science Alert puts out this article. Scientists spliced human brain tissue into the brains of baby rats. Self-organizing lumps of human brain tissue grown in the laboratory have been successfully transplanted into the nervous system of newborn rats in a step towards finding new ways to treat neuropsychiatric disorders. Well, are you actually going to treat neuropsychiatric disorders, or are you going to raise a generation of master splinters? Actually, the latter would be kind of cool, I'm not going to lie. The 3D organoids developed from stem cells to resemble a simplified model of the human cortex, connected and integrated with the surrounding tissue in each rat's cortex to form a functional part of the rodent's own brain, displaying activity related to sensory perception. This, according to a team of researchers led by neuroscientist Sergiu Pasca of Stanford University, overcomes the limitations of dish-grown organoids and gives us a new platform for modeling human brain development and disease in a living system. Yeah, but what about the rats? Most of the work that my lab has been doing has been motivated by this mission of trying to understand psychiatric disorders at the biological level so that we can actually find effective therapeutics, Pasca explained in a press briefing. Yeah, speaking of things that are Japanese, now here I am sitting here talking about Master Splinter. Many of these psychiatric conditions, such as autism and schizophrenia, are likely uniquely human, or at least they're anchored in unique features of the human brain. And when the human brain has certainly not been very accessible, which has precluded the progress we've been making in understanding the biology of these conditions. In 2008, scientists made breakthrough brain cells grown from induced pluripotent stem cells. Mature cells harvested from adult humans were reverse engineered or induced to return them to blank state of stem cells. The form cells take before they grow into cells with specializations, such as skin cells or cardiac cells. These stem cells were then guided to develop their brain cells, which scientists cultivated to form lumps of brain-like tissue called organoids. These models of key areas of brain anatomy, such as the wrinkled outer cortex, could be used to study functions and develop the brains up close. As useful as they are, in vitro cortical organoids have limitations because they aren't connected to living systems. They don't complete maturation, depriving researchers of an opportunity to observe how they integrate with other major parts of the brain. So, I am a bit on the fence with this one. I don't know if it's completely fair to call this thing that I hate, because it does look like they are looking at trying to cure diseases rather than euthanize diseases, as our friends like Stacey Abrams would like us to do. It does look like they're actually attempting to do this, but I mean, at what point is too much and at what point is too far? That's some of the question that I have here, and I mean, we saw what happened with Wuhan. When you're going into something with typically what you would think is honorable intentions, trying to make a disease so you can figure out how to cure it in a hurry, versus releasing it out to the world and shutting down the world economy because you released it. I don't know. I have reservations about something like this. Partially because it reduces the human experience down into a commodity, and partially because I can't help but wonder in ways why or how this could be misused. I mean, again, if it's only going to be for curing neurological diseases, Down syndrome, autism, things like that, cerebral palsy, you know, I've seen that in my extended family before. If it's only going to be for things like that, or even to try to mitigate brain cancer or something like that. But, you know, when we've got an army of super rats running around that can speak and have the same level of intelligence as we do, what do we do then? I don't know. But that question there is for people who are a lot smarter than I am, or a lot more educated than I am, I should say. For now, I will look at this, I will watch this, and I will take it with a grain of nervousness. And we'll head out of here for the day. Got to return a phone call now. Or text. He texted me, but I said that I was going to call tomorrow. So, yeah, we got to head out of here. Who can we raid? Who are we going to raid today? Maybe we want to set that up before we get started, so I can at least announce it. Cowboy. The Cowboy Strun. Should we... Let's go with Dahlia, because we haven't been over there for a while. Yeah, we'll go and see the Elder Scrolls today, because we've been to Cowboy Strong this week already. So if you're on Twitch, stick around with us here, and let's get some outro music, and let's get out of here. Alright, so thanks everybody who came by and chatted and hung out in the live chat and kept us on point. And if you did just lurk today and didn't get one message in, why not get one message in so I can say your screen name on air tomorrow? Definitely love doing that. We'll be going over some of the live chat tomorrow. I have the list of people who have chatted in the live chat so far on the handy dandy notebook here. So we'll go over, we'll see what the rest of you guys are doing this week. Definitely looking forward to doing that. And we'll go over some of your live chat again tomorrow. Note, again, because we're competing with an AM radio audience, I might not be able to get to all of your live chats. Sometimes you guys get a little bit spicy out there, but definitely look forward to coming in and communicating with you, see what's important to you guys. It's my favorite part of the week. It's my favorite part of Friday. So definitely we will look into that. We will see you here tomorrow with more news, more headlines, and more contemporary, plus the 3 that we had left over from today. Definitely looking forward to that. And yeah, we are seeing a bit of a news slowdown, but that doesn't mean that we can't sit back and enjoy discussing the things that are going off of this. So come back. We'll see what's happening here tomorrow over on Contemporary. Stick around if you're on Twitch for the raid, and we will see you next time here. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary.